Hello guys, in this video we will build together a friendship system using Laravel, and the purpose of that video is getting familiar with many-to-many relationship by learning this advanced and complex example. Let's start. As you see here, I listed a 5 user in my database and I am logging in manually. If I log in as Muhammad here, if I click also, it login using this controller, my login controller. I am logging in using login using ID, and here is my endpoint. Just pass user ID and it will login easily without entering email and password more and more, right? Our user model here has some users, right? And friends will be the relationship between users themselves. So we don't have two tables. No, we have only one table, and the relation will be between users themselves. So for example, in my users table, the user ID number 1 may be a friend of user ID number 2, and also user ID number 2 may be a friend of user ID number 1, and so on, right? So the first thing we need to do is creating our pivot table. I will create my pivot table here. PHP artisan make migration create friends table hyphen create equal to friends, right? Back to our friends here, migration friends or database migrations, and here is our friends table. All right, so the first column will be foreign ID for user, right? User class, and it will be constrained also, constrained. Another column also will be called friend ID. It will be also from users table, right? And this one will be user ID. And for friends request, we will create another column called enum. Here will be status and will be between pending or accepted, right? Pending for friends request and accepted after accepting a friend request, and the default one will be pending when sending a request, and last one will be date, and we will call it friends since, and it will be nullable. All right, let's migrate it. Artisan migrate back to our database, refresh, and here's our friends table: user ID, friend ID, status, and friends since. Let's back to our user model, and this define our relationship function here, friends, and return here, return this belongs to many, as we know, and it will be user class, the same class here, this class, and you can use self also. Self works like this class, use this user class. The table name will be friends, and yeah, that's it. So the first thing we need to do is sending a friend request, right? Now let's create our friends controller. So controller PHP artisan make controller and create friends controller, right? Back to our friends controller, and let's create our endpoint function, send friend request here, request, and I want to select a user. I want to send a friend user, so this endpoint will send a friend request to that user, right? Back to our endpoint web, let's create our root. I will create all of them as get, right, to make it easy. Here send request to user, send request to, and our friends controller friends controller here, use this method, right? Friends request, and let's give it a name, send request, right? And let's use it in our blade. Let's die and dump here dd user id, and in our blade here I will use it instead of action. Instead of that, I will create a button called send friend request. Here, send request, right? And href will be this here, right? Root send request, I think this one, and send request to that user, parameter here user, right? Or other user, because this table lists other users, so I am logged in as Jack and displays all users not Jack in this list, right? Refresh and send request, and when I click here it will die and dump the ID number 1 of the user Ahmed, or if I change it, it displays 2, as you can see here. So let's implement our endpoint here, and for that user, right, friends sync current authenticated user ID, auth ID. So the logic will be like that. I will send a request to user ID number 2, right? And for example, I used like user ID number 3, and status will be automatically pending, right? Here, refresh, discard, and after creating a friend request, return back, right? Here, let's back to our browser, refresh, send a request to Ahmed. By the way, let's check. Jack is ID number 4 and Ahmed is ID number 1. So send request. We have general error, friend ID doesn't have a default value. The reason behind that, we need to define our foreign keys. So back to our user, and our foreign key will be here user ID, and friend's ID will be friend ID. Alright, so back, refresh, and we have another error. I think the error is in migrations file. If we back to our friends table here, this one friend ID automatically may detect friends ID table. So because we defined this friend ID, Laravel automatically thought there is a table called friends. But in our constraint, we will define our table. It will be users, right? Users also. And back to our table, let's fix it. Here, structure, instead of friends, I will edit it to users, right? Users here. Okay, save, refresh, and now to back to our browser, refresh again, and it works. Back to our table, data, refresh. As you can see here, user ID number 4 sends a friend request to user ID number 1. Let's try with other user. I will send a friend request to Muhammad, right? It's sent, refresh, and again user ID number 4 want to be a friend of user ID number 2. Also, let's make these two timestamps fillable. Back to our friends class or users class, and let's say with timestamps. Now let's remove them, truncate our table from my table plus, disable foreign key. Okay, save and refresh. Table are truncated. Refresh again, send a request, friend request sent, and back to our table, and now it's filled, right? If you notice here, the status is pending, which means this is a friend request. So let's create another relationship for friends request. Back again to our users class, and I will say function friend requests, right, and return the same relationship here, right, and I will say where pivot status table, right, where status table inside pivot table, which is friends, equal to pending. And here back to our login controller, and I will say here friends, or yeah, I will back to requests, here friends requests equal to current authenticated user, right, and back with all friend requests, right. Then I will block IDs. I want to get friends IDs only, friend ID to array, right. So if I die and dump these friend requests here, back again, refresh, and login as Ahmed, it will return I have a friend request from ID number 4, which is Jack, as you can see here, right. If I logged in as another user, John, he has no friend request, and it works correctly. So back again and remove DD and login as Ahmed, and now I logged as Ahmed. So if you notice here, Jack send a friend request. Instead of that, I want to check if this user sends a friend request, display accept or reject buttons. So back here to our view, right, blade, and I will do something like that. If user, right, if other user ID in array, this one, other user ID in arrays of requests, right, display that button here. Button will be red for reject, and another button for accept will be success, which is green, and back again, refresh. I have an error. Yeah, I want to send it here. After logging in, I will say with back with requests and send requests, or even we can use compact directly. Compact here requests, right. So refresh, and I think also we need to back it with list endpoint, index endpoint, this one here. So I will check here friend requests, right, current authenticated user, and also add requests. Refresh, and now it works fine. And as you noticed here, now Jack, because he sends a friend request to me, now we have two buttons. Let's put back other buttons here, send the friend request buttons. So at else create a button and send friend request, and let's remove them and put a tag, and instead of submit it will be href, right. So for sending a friend request, let's put it back here, href equal to, right, refresh, and now it works fine. So Ahmed also can send a friend request to these users, and because he has a request from Jack, he can accept or reject. So let's implement accept and reject methods. Let's go to our friends controller here, friends controller, and our method will be first one reject, and it will be also from user, right, here, and it will be user, right, friends, and detach this request from this user, right, user ID. All right, so and return back. Let's create our root here, and it will be reject, right, and also slash user, and our method is reject, and will be also reject request. Back to our view, and here our reject method href equal to root, right, and our root is reject dot request, and from that user, from other user here, other user, let's copy it. Now let's back test, and if I click reject, right, reject, and now also if I refresh, it's done deleted. Back to our table, refresh, still existing, right. If I back here to our controller, so it must be current authenticated user, not user. So current authenticated user here, back again, refresh, reject, and now as you can see it's deleted. Back to our database, refresh, and it's deleted. So here, take care of that point. I will remove the friends request for current authenticated user, not the users who sent a friend request. So again, let's implement our accept method, and it will be again user, right, and we have a trick here. We will accept, and we will say update existing pivot, right, which updates a states. So I will update the states from pending to accept, and I will pass the user ID and the array of column I want to update. So status will be accept, right, and or accepted, and friends, I think it's a friend sense, right, I will set a date for that column, friend sense, this one here, friend sense, now to date time string or to date string, right, because the column type is date, not date time, right. And again, for the user who sent this request, I will create another column also called accept. So here it will also user friends, right, and sync, also create a friend from current authenticated user ID, and data will be the same as you can see here, right. Copy, paste, let's beautify it, and as you can see here, when user accept a friend request, the states will be accepted, and also we will create another relation for the user who sent a friend request, because back again to our user here, the friend here, friends relation, the foreign ID is user ID, so we must create another row for that user, right. Back again, and after that return back. All right, so here refresh, let's send a friend request to Jack. I am Ahmed, right, and I will send a friend request to Jack here, send a friend request, it's sent, right. Let's log in as Jack, and as you can see here, Jack has a friend request from Ahmed. I will accept it. Let's firstly implement our root for accept point or accept method. It will be the same, instead of reject it will be accept, and our method will be accept, right? And also root will be accept. In our blade, I will create it here, right? Copy from reject, and it will be the same as href reject, but instead of reject it will be accept, right? Refresh. Now let's accept here, and it's accepted. Back to our database data. Now we have two users or two friends. User ID number 4 is a friend of ID number 1, and also user ID number 1 is a friend of user ID number 4, right? Also, if you noticed here in our blade, now we have two users are friends. Now Jack is friends with Ahmed, but still having this button send friend request. So let's implement another code here in our controller, right, in our index, and I will say here friends or my friends, right, equal to authenticated user, and return my friends or my friends. Also block friend ID and convert it to array. But first let's implement our my friends method inside our user here, right? Function my friends, and return also the same like that, our many to many, and we will say where pivot, right, where status must be accepted, right, because we may have pending, as you can see here, pending for friends request and accepted for current friends. Okay, so back to our controller and refresh. Now we have our friends, and in my blade I will also say at else if here in array of friends, this one, in array of my friends, right, my friends. Let's back and compact also my friends. Back to our view, refresh, and I will display a button called remove friend, right? Here's this one button, delete friend. Let's back and refresh. Now we have button, and let's change this color to red because delete, right? And instead of button it will be a, and href we will implement our endpoint. Back to friends, and here I will implement our function delete, right, and user I want to delete from my friends list, and I will delete it 2 times, one for me and other for my friends. So let's copy our code here, right, and here I will remove this array, and also I will remove that array, and I will remove only one ID from each side. Instead of that I will use detach method like this one here, and also the same thing here, and I will return back. Let's create our root, and here delete friend, right, and the whole here also, and delete. Alright, back to our blade and add these methods here, root, delete friend, and delete this friend, right, other user. here, refresh. Now let's back our database, refresh. Here we have one friend for Jack. If I delete it, now user has been deleted. Back to our database, refresh, and it's empty. Alright, also if you noticed, if I send a request to Ahmed, friend request here, it's sent, but still this button exists, right? Send friend request. But if you noticed here, our database has pending requests. So we need to implement another relationship to get requests that I sent. So the difference between that relationship, this one here, this friend requests, this mean requests that I received, but we need to implement another one for requests that I sent. So the same thing here, but small trick. So it will be sent requests, right? And we will reverse the foreign keys. So the main foreign key will be friend ID, and other one will be user ID, right? Back to our index, and here this one, my friends, instead of my friends, sorry, instead of that we will use block user ID, and our relationship name is sent requests, right? Here sent requests. And let's back to our blade, refresh, and let's change it from requests to sent requests, and I will compact it also here. Now refresh and back to our blade and check else if here at else if. Actually, let's copy it instead of repeating code, right? And I will say delete request, right? Let's change it now, tag, and instead of my friends I implemented it as sent requests. So if this user, I send a request to him, so display this button. Back and refresh, we have now delete request button, right? Let's implement it in our controller. You can pause the video and start implementing it. So here function delete request, right? Here user, again user, and let's say our current authenticated user, detach this user. Actually it's like reject, but instead of friends I will use my relationship here. Back to our user, and I will say sent requests, right, to delete user ID instead of friend ID, and return back to our database. We have a friend request, back to blade, right? And let's add our root here, delete request that I sent to that user, and our method is delete request. This one here, web, delete request, and delete request. Back to our blade, and our root name is root, here delete request, and I will provide other user, right? Or you can use ID also, other user, back refresh. Now let's remove it, it's deleted. Back to our database, refresh. Now also request has been deleted. Alright, so let's try the whole feature, refresh, and I will send requests to all users, send to Ahmed, send to Muhammad, send to Ali, send to John, right? And I will login as Ahmed to accept this request, login as Ahmed, and we have a request from Jack, accept, it's accepted. Now we have delete friend, back to our database, right? Here we have two friends, this one. And also let's send a request from Ahmad to Muhammad, right? I sent a request, and let's login as Muhammad, and it's rejected. It's rejected also. And back again, login as Ahmad, delete friend, and it's deleted. Back to our database, and it works fine. Last but not least, what if we want to display this friend since date? Since I using it inside this method index, we can actually make it directly inside Tinker, right? Clear PHP artisan Tinker, right? And for ID number 1 or 2, I want to display his friends, so user find, right? Imagine I authenticated as user ID number 2, and I want to display my friends, right? So I will say my friends here, friends, and by using this pivot, right? But because we have user ID and friend ID, we need to add this method here inside our user for my friends, this one, and I will say with pivot attach friends at column, also friends at or since, right? Back again, redo it, and as you can see here, friend since, and it returns date by accessing for each for pivot, and you can access directly to friend since column. Here is about advanced usage of many-to-many relationship. Support me by clicking on like, share, and subscribe. See you in next videos.